Morning, everybody. Governor Evers here. I'd like to welcome the commissioners and guests joining us today for a virtual meeting of the Transportation Projects Commission. We've reached the 9 o'clock hour. I call the meeting to order. And would the Secretary, Ned Grady, Secretary of the Committee, Ned Grady, call the roll, please?
Thank you, Governor Evers. Just as a reminder, use *6 if you are calling by phone to unmute and mute. I will now begin the roll. Governor Evers.
Here.
Senator Coles. Senator Coles.
He's excused.
Okay. Senator Hansen.
Here.
Senator Carpenter.
Here.
Senator Petrowski.
Here.
Senator Markline.
Here.
Representative Krug.
Here.
Representative Spiros. Representative Spreitzer.
Here.
Representative Reamer.
Excused.
The Representative Plummer.
I'm here.
Commissioner Serby.
Present.
Director Bussler.
Here.
Executive Director Hannah.
Here.
Secretary Designee Thompson.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ned. You know, throughout all the levels of our administration, we quickly realized that we couldn't let the pandemic keep us from doing the important work we need to do for the people of Wisconsin. Today's meeting is another example of how we've used innovation to keep vital services and our entire state moving forward. The work of this commission is obviously a crucial part to that. So I appreciate the hard work that you all do and why you do it, because you recognize that a strong and healthy Wisconsin depends on having the best transportation system possible. It enables us to get to work, get to school, deliver supplies, services. It allows our businesses from our iconic industries to small startups in the garage next door to reach suppliers and customers across the world. So while we may be talking about budgets, routes, and construction methods today, at the basics, we are really talking about keeping Wisconsin strong economically and socially for all Wisconsinites. So I'd like to start by providing a quick overview of what's going to happen today. Since we dedicated time last meeting to provide an overview of the important role that major projects play in maintaining a safe, efficient, and well-maintained highway system, today representatives of the Wisconsin Department of Transportation will briefly review the importance of the programs and the project timelines and the roles and the responsibilities of stakeholders. Wisconsin DOT will focus its presentations on recommendations for environmental studies and project construction approval. And you've seen your binder material. It's plentiful. Wisconsin DOT is recommending that 2 major highway environmental study projects be removed from the list of approved study projects, as identified needs on these projects can be satisfied as state highway rehabilitation projects. Wisconsin DOT is also recommending the committee consider and approve 2 projects that qualify for construction as high-cost major projects under state law. Motions on these recommendations will be called later. Now, before I turn the meeting over to Secretary Designee Thompson, I want to recognize Wisconsin DOT's positive program results that were detailed in the August 2020 TPC report. The report showed that a $12.8 million decrease in the total cost estimate for all construction projects, including majors and Southeast mega projects. The state is getting more project for less money. It's a good example of how our folks at the Wisconsin DOT continue to look for every opportunity to deliver projects more cost effectively. That same spirit of focusing our limited resources on most needed projects and then managing them as carefully as possible also guided the measured and prudent recommendations that are brought to the TPC for your consideration. Unfortunately, my schedule will not permit me to attend the entire meeting. Without objection, I ask that my Deputy Chief of Staff, Barb Worcester, serve as my proxy. And I hear no complaints about that. So I really appreciate that. Barb will do a great job representing me and the state of Wisconsin at this time. So I just want to thank you for your time. It's great turnout today, and most importantly, for your important service to Wisconsin's public. So at this time, I'll turn things over to Secretary Designee Thompson. Craig, take it away.
Thank you, Governor. And I'd like to add my thanks to the commissioners for the truly vital work that you do on behalf of this commission. You know, this commission has a great responsibility to provide guidance on the most important transportation projects that we consider as a state. You do that by both approving the projects that will move ahead and by putting a hold on the projects that no longer meet the high criteria for a major project. We will be presenting to you with both of those decisions today as you determine the future of these projects going forward. As the governor mentioned, at WSDOT, we approach everything we do knowing that it's our responsibility to make the most effective possible use of the state's transportation investment. Even with the increased funding that we saw in the last budget, we are still keenly aware that the need for resources at all levels is greater than the supply. That's why our focus has been on fixing what we have first, coming up with innovative ways to get the most out of every dollar. One example of that is our low risk program, designed to cut unneeded red tape and to accelerate projects, finishing them in less time and for less cost. Working with our county partners, we have already seen savings from this program. Another is our use of adaptive scheduling for projects, taking advantage of low traffic that we've seen really during this pandemic to speed up projects and realize cost savings. And projects like the flex lane on the Beltline provide a cost-effective way of increasing capacity and decreasing congestion. Matter of fact, as we meet here today, there's a letting going on for the first stage of the Beltline Flex Lane project. That's the same meticulous data-driven approach to the major highway projects that we present to you today. As we plan for the state's transportation future, we need to look forward to the system that people of Wisconsin will need in the 21st century and beyond. WSDOT is currently completing our comprehensive long-term transportation plan, Connect 2050. That plan looks forward to a day when Wisconsinites will require a broader range of mobility options and where the private motor vehicle is no longer a requirement for getting around. WSDOT just convened the second meeting of our Wisconsin Non-Driver Advisory Committee, where various stakeholders who use or provide mobility options can study the needs of those who don't or can't drive. More options for rail, transit, biking, and walking help not only non-drivers, but everyone in the community. We're continually upgrading the intelligent transportation systems that we use to share real-time information with drivers and with local highway departments. And we're planning for the day when connected and automated vehicle technology, known as CAV, transforms the surface transportation for everyone. WSDOT has an internal CAV committee made up of our leadership team, and we also convene an external stakeholder CAV group that we call WAVE. Wisconsin's been a national leader through its participation in the annual CAV Summit of the Mid-America Association of State Transportation Officials. This is the 10 states in the Midwest. These teams are taking a thorough look at the many changes in everything from state law to construction materials that will be needed to make sure Wisconsin adopts this technology safely and for its benefits to be realized by all citizens. Along with providing safer and more effective transportation options in the most cost-effective manner, all of these strategies represent ways to increase mobility and capacity without increasing our footprint. The two projects we will recommend for enumeration today are examples of this objective. They're major projects, but only because of their cost, not because they will expand those sections of highway. A highway project isn't defined as a major just because it tends to be large and costly. Major projects are chosen because of the major impacts that they have on the lives of Wisconsin citizens. Major projects enhance the economic growth by enabling the mobility of people, goods, and services to move from all regions of the state. They relieve traffic congestion, which in turn reduces the number of crashes and fatalities, getting people to their destinations safely and on time. And they achieve these important community objectives while minimizing their impact on the environment. In short, these projects represent an important investment in the economic competitiveness and quality of life of our communities statewide. We often talk about major projects in terms of where they are located, but it's important to understand that major projects improve the condition of our entire highway system. Major projects typically occur on corridors where the infrastructure is near the end of its useful life. Consequently, major projects fund the costly replacement of degraded pavement and bridges that would otherwise have to be funded out of our state highway rehabilitation program. That has found that at least 50% of the cost of a typical major project would have to be absorbed by our state highway rehabilitation program in the absence of a major project. So while major projects may come with high price tags, they also bring additional transportation resources into the state and allow us to make better use of our state highway rehabilitation funding. Today, we're asking you to consider a department recommendation to remove 2 environmental study projects, as the governor mentioned, from the list of approved study projects. The department has determined that the need for these studies relative to the competing statewide needs is not significant enough to move forward with at this time. In addition, these corridors can be maintained satisfactorily through our state highway rehabilitation program improvements. Improvements needed at these locations to improve safety and reduce congestion, just in our opinion, are not at the scope that warrant a major project at this time. One corridor that is a statewide priority and cannot be maintained satisfactorily through our state highway rehabilitation program is the I-39-90-94 corridor from Madison to the Wisconsin Dells, a major economic lifeline for our entire state. Because congestion and accidents will continue to increase on this corridor, we have determined there is significant need to resume the project study. You're going to hear a little bit more about this in just a moment. Finally, we will be requesting that this committee consider our recommendation to enumerate 2 studies as major projects. These are not the traditional major projects, but their cost qualifies them under statutes as high-cost major projects. So with that, once again, I really do want to thank each of you for your time and your commitment to this process. And I look forward to our really talented staff being able to update you much more on all of this. Commissioners, I hope you've had an opportunity to review the minutes from our last meeting from December 2019. At this point in time, I'd like to ask if there's any discussion on the minutes.
I would recommend approval. Tim Carpenter.
Motion by Senator Carpenter for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
I'd like to say that this is Senator Petrosky.
Motion seconded by Senator Petrosky. All those in favor, please sign aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved. Now I'd like to introduce Joe Nestler and Jeff Dust with our department's Division of Transportation Investment Management to provide an update on the Major Highway Program and discuss the department's recommendations for the Major Highway Development Program. Joe?
Joe, you'll need to unmute yourself when you're ready.
Okay, how about that?
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that. One moment here. And can you see my slide presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so here we go. TPC roles, responsibilities, as Governor Evers mentioned, we spent quite a bit of time in the last meeting on that, so I'll just do a more cursory review today. So TPC created in 1983 to approve major study projects and to recommend construction enumeration for consideration by the legislature in the biennial budget. In 2011, there was a statute created, 84013-1A2M, for high-cost major projects, and that's projects that didn't meet the traditional major definition, but were very high in cost and burdensome to the highway rehab program. And those projects, we have 2 recommendations today that fall under that category. So I'm going to focus on a quick overview. Let's look at standard definition. What's a major highway project? Well, it's relocating or creating a new roadway of more than 2 miles. It's adding 1 or more lanes, 5 or more miles, or converting freeway standards 10 or more miles. Traditional definition, and then this high cost definition was saying, hey, a project that costs more than 75 million and didn't meet the aforementioned definitions would qualify as a high cost major. And it says now we had some costs in here. You'll see a 30 million and a 75, and statutes directed us to index those to inflation. And we use the Wisconsin Construction Cost Index. And that now has those, the 30 million for traditional projects is 43.5 million in 2020 dollars. And the high cost projects you'll be considering today is 108.7 is the threshold, and both of the projects we'll recommend exceed that threshold. So overall goals, and the governor mentioned this early on, program goals of enhancing Wisconsin's economy, reliable and safe travel on key corridors, lowering business costs, allowing convenient recreation and safe, reliable travel getting to jobs, work, etc. Improving highway service, that's the mobility piece, the travel time congestion piece of it. Safety speaks for itself. Usually projects that we're recommending under traditional major highways have significant safety and congestion concerns. And if we're recommending projects, the environmental process we take on, we try to the extent that we can, have preferred alternatives that minimize environmental impacts and that serve community objectives. So the Majors program enables necessary reconstruction and modernization. So we, first of all, we use, as mentioned earlier, we use every tool available to get the physical utility out of our infrastructure before we have to replace it or modernize it to a current standard. And so we're using asset management, performance-based practical design to get that value. Operationally, we want to leverage mode choices. We use intelligent transportation systems, or ITS. We want to leverage mass transit, rail, water, bike, and ped, things that really can help enhance the operational utility of existing roadways. And then ultimately, sometimes after doing all that we can with asset management and other operational tools, major projects are sometimes necessary to address infrastructure condition, safety, and congestion needs on key corridors. So the program benefits, typically significant safety and travel time benefits. It lowers the costs for users, helps keep Wisconsin competitive and attractive for businesses. Also quality of life with safe and reliable travel. Economic analysis shows that our major projects are superior to their non-major alternatives. We make sure they pass that test before we make recommendations. And then, as Secretary Thompson mentioned, majors actually do have a positive effect on infrastructure condition. We've seen that at least 50% of the cost of typical major highway projects offset rehabilitation that we would have to do. And I would stress at least, because we often see it much higher than 50%. So, roles and responsibilities. Standard definitions. Majors cost more than 30 million. They relocate or build a new highway of at least 2.5 miles, add an existing lane for 5 miles or more, or do a freeway conversion of at least 10 miles. Or they cost more than 75 million. Remember, we have to index to inflation. So now it's that 30 million is 43.5, and the high cost project threshold is now 108.7 million. So the roles of you as a commission, your TPC approves potential major projects for environmental study. The TPC recommends projects for enumeration after environmental study. That's the traditional major highway project definition. For these high cost majors, the 84013-1A2M, the high cost majors, you as a commission have authority to approve these projects for construction in the major highway program. And I'll show you the statutes that allow that. And the TPC monitors ongoing project costs and schedules. So traditional major projects, we have a process. DOT starts with a highway planning. We're looking at needs on the system. And when we have serious congestion and safety issues that we can't maintain through other means, we come to the TPC and request permission to do an environmental study. TPC, we cannot study a project unless you approve it. And then when a study is completed, only after we have a signed environmental document by FHWA, we evaluate the alternatives and we may recommend a project for your consideration. And the TPC, you would then either approve or not approve a recommendation. And if you approve, your recommendation would go forward to be considered in the biennial budget. So these high cost projects, how does that work? So we start again with our planning process. We have infrastructure needs, operational needs that we have to look at, and we conduct an environmental study. And only after we have a draft environmental study can we recommend that you consider a project. And both of the projects today have reached the draft environmental study phase. And then should you approve, you have the authority to approve projects for construction. So let's look at the statutes relevant to today's meeting. So 84013 defines major, and then approval of the commission required for study. And it says we may not prepare an environmental impact statement or an environmental assessment without commission approval. However, this doesn't apply to these high-cost major highway projects. That's because we have to maintain a state of good repair on these roadways, so we have to do something. We're not looking for the major expansion, so the statutes let us go ahead and do the study, get to a draft, and then bring them to the TPC. Okay, there's a lot of stuff here. Those of you that were around with previous enumerations know we have to show we can start a project, that there's funding to start a project within 6 years, that we have to follow a recipe that directs how we assess the funding level. What's most important is what I have in a rectangle. This does not apply to the major highway projects, the high-cost major highway projects. That being said, we would not recommend a project if we didn't believe that the program could handle the inclusion of the project. So we'll show you that we believe we have ample room for enumeration for what we're or for your approval for what we're recommending today. So for any major highway projects, these high cost projects, the department, again, we can only submit our recommendation for your consideration only after the draft environmental document. And then you as a commission may approve with modifications, or disapprove of our request. And we cannot proceed unless we have your approval to construct the project. Now, this is not in your slide packet. Every other slide is in your tab. I decided to add it today. It dawned on me that some of you that have been around when we recommended enumeration will remember we have a scoring process for traditional major highway projects. And state statutes, this 13489-2, instructed us to develop an administrative rule to score projects. And we did that, and we've been using this for close to 3 decades. And it works well. It hits some of the things that the governor mentioned early on. It looks at the economy as a big weight in the equation: traffic flow, safety, environmental measure. But notice it says this process I highlighted in red, it does not apply to major highway projects under 84013 and then when you open that up, that's going to point to these high cost majors. And the reason it doesn't apply is that these were really looking at traditional majors and expanding and modernizing, whereas high cost projects were usually trying to solve a different problem. And it's often the problem we're solving is simply maintaining a state of good repair. And so the economic measures and the traffic flow measures don't really come into play. So that's why we didn't use this scoring method. When Jeff Gus reviews the projects, you're going to see that we did a robust benefit cost analysis, however, on our own, to make sure that our recommendations are prudent ones. So I thought I would mention that. So now I'll pause and see if there are any questions before I move to financial status.
Joe?
Yes.
This is Jerry Petrusky. I'm not sure this is the right time to ask this question, and I don't want to get into a real long dialogue because I know that we only have that much time. But I was always wondering, when you make these determinations, the matrix that you use, do you weight different factors differently on different projects? I understand that safety always has to be probably the most important, whether it's traffic count, fatalities, congestion. All those are factors. Of course, when you get into the cost, it's environmental, if it's mitigation, if there's contamination. There's all those things. You look at regions that are changing population-wise. You also look at input from local governments. I'm just wondering, are those factors weighted differently? You know, like basing a determination is 25% of the issue that you make a determination on, or does that change even depending on the project and where it is?
So we do try to make it a universal application per the statutes and the administrative rules. So economy's 40%, traffic and safety are both 20%. But that being said, Senator, a point that you're mentioning is it's on target from this standpoint. Not all projects are created equal. And so we want to make sure that the sensitivity of our measures pick that up. So what do I mean? Well, if I have a congestion issue on project A versus a congestion issue on project B, we only have so much money to go around. So which one, if I can only solve one, which one gives me significantly more bang for the buck? So we are trying in our analysis what we do. So this is a recipe that when we bring this Trans 210 score, it's designed to be an objective measure when we bring projects for you under a traditional major recommendation to weight these things and to line projects up and see how they rank. To help you decide whether or not you'd support a project. But this is when we are recommending a project. But we have to get through, and we have to, before we recommend a project, we've done an environmental study. So we've come to you typically years before asking to do a study. Now, some of the things that you're getting at when we think about which projects to study, we're looking at these weights, and we tried to the extent that we can to mirror these in a data-driven objective process of how we're triaging projects. So we're actually trying to look at in a measure that we have which projects will give us the most bang for the buck, from a safety benefit, from a traffic flow benefit. Then the environmental piece and the community input piece, once we're done with our math is only math. You mentioned a lot of other intangibles that we don't necessarily have an equation or data to model. We then go to our regions and we say, okay, here's the scores, draft scores, and we vet with them to make sure that the intangibles such as community input, what they may know from an environmental piece at that point, that we're trying to vet projects to only bring the most beneficial projects forward. That being the case, sometimes we do all of that, and some of our projections don't pan out. And you're going to see that with 94 St. Croix County later today, that the forecasts that we thought we'd have years ago are not materializing. We've redone our forecasts, and we're not seeing the need for the project at this time. So we're course correcting and backing off. That was a lot. I hope that it got at your question. Could you let me know if I did?
No, Joe, I appreciate your answer. I look at this, and to me, the way it sounds from your description is that there are different factors that play a role in this, sometimes at different times in that figuring out which projects are going to come to the forefront and which ones are going to be held back. You're allowing local governments to weigh in through the different districts, and that's probably down the road farther than from the initial study and things like that. So yes, no, I appreciate your thoughts on this. So thank you, Joe.
Yeah. I would just want to add one point that Senator Petrowski had mentioned, the local governments weighing in. On the screen, you see 10 points or 10% for community input measure. And we look at local plans and things like that. But our process, the fact that, I'm getting a little forgetful, but I think the fact that we had to have the environmental documents done prior to recommendation came in about 15 years ago, where that came into play around 2005-ish. And something important came with that, and that is that the environmental process on a project that has a lot of impacts, it's significantly enhanced. Like, for example, our Verona Road project, I believe we had well over 100 meetings, public input meetings, well in excess of 100. So part of that we've gotten better over time with getting community input.
Okay. Again, Joe, thank you.
Okay, I will move on and go to financial status. So if you took out the TPC report and you charted where the expenditures were, what you're seeing in red on the screen are projects with dollars scheduled in front of us. And I would point out that there are question marks near La Crosse, and we note it in the TPC report. Those are placeholder years. We do not have a preferred alternative on La Crosse. That's still in an early environmental study phase, and there's some other. So that's why the question marks are there. It's a placeholder. And then the gold, the yellow for Shearing Road, that project we just got started in this budget in fiscal 20. The legislature enumerated the project. It did not have an environmental document, so we're starting it. We don't have a preferred alternative. That's why we don't have certain costs and schedules. So we've got the yellow represents that difference. So looking at the TPC report, this is a quick summary of what happened for the major projects in the TPC report. And as Governor Evers mentioned this morning, we had some good news. The net decrease, if you summed all these up, the net decrease is $12.8 million. And you can see where we had the pluses and minuses. We had 2 projects with slight increase in costs and 2 projects with decrease in costs for a net decrease of $12.8 million. So Highway 15, it went up $1.7 million, and that was primarily due to some scope change and a design refinement. So the project is added in polymer overlay costs to protect all of the new bridges that it would be building. And it also did a design to improve drainage at an at-grade railroad crossing. So that project had a net $1.7 million increase. I-39, you'll see that's a minus 14.6 million. And that's the product of several things. One is that we're proud of is that we continue to economize, and the region team was evaluating looking at designs on some retaining walls, and they reconfigured a design and were actually able to reduce height on a retaining wall and lower cost. We also have had let savings on that project, and because we're late stage, most of the big work has been let. We've been able to release some contingency dollars, so it's brought the cost down. Highway 43, that had a slight decrease, $300,000 net decrease. If you open that up, you're going to see that the region was comfortable lowering the design costs, and there was also a slight construction cost increase, but they netted an overall decrease. And then Highway 50, real estate costs went up on that project, but construction estimate came down, and it had a net of 400,000. So that's a quick summary of what you saw in the last report. For majors, let's take a look at Southeast Megas. No change. The North-South Freeway project and the Zoo Interchange project, both no change in cost. So if we plotted this, the blue, that's all the majors and study costs that we have, the things that you saw in red on the schedule. I should have changed this color to red. But that's projects that we know that we have scheduled. And then the orange bars, that's I-41. And that's preliminary placeholder for I-41. And we say preliminary again because we don't have a preferred alternative. The one thing we want to let you to know, for this chart, we took La Crosse out because that's La Crosse. If you open up the TPC report, there's $136 million of placeholder. And because we don't have a preferred alternative, we don't see it as that it's going to compete for funding in 24 and 25. So we removed it from this consideration. Now, if you look at what I just did, some red arrows come up, and that's room for enumeration. So while we don't have a 6-year official statutory start requirement, we weren't going to come before you and say, hey, we'd like to bring projects forward if we didn't have the financial wherewithal to do it. Now, this presumes, of course, that our budget level of $282.8 million continues. Yeah, if it does, what you're seeing, if you sum up the red arrows, there would be a little north of $400 million of room for enumeration, 430 million by my calculation. And the projects that Jeff is going to be previewing have a net sum together of 315 million. So we have plenty of room to fit these projects in. If we fit the projects in, here's what the schedule looks like. So the blue is our majors and mega studies today. The yellow is how we would be phasing in the Wisconsin River bridges. And then the dark blue at the top here is how we would factor in Stoughton McFarland. So we basically fill the program through 27, and then we have some room in 28. Now, if you're looking at page 40 of your binder, there we made a correction. You would see a gray bar in year fiscal 29 that just goes above the 100 million. That was an error, and so we've corrected it here. That there's 41. If it comes in at this placeholder estimate, will be done in fiscal 28, and it won't bleed over into 29. So we'll get an updated. And we'll get this updated to you. So that's where I will end. And just again, I'll just quickly pause for questions before I pass along to Jeff. Okay, hearing none, Mr. Gust, I'm going to stop sharing and yield the floor.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Gust, and I'm going to try to share my screen, and I hope you can all hear me. So now I get to the exciting part, the projects. So the first projects I'm going to talk about are studies, and for those of you that are that don't have a connection through are on the phone, we are on tab 5, page 85 in your binder. And again, my name is Jeff Gust. I'm the Bureau of State Highway Programs Director, and I'm also the name that's the contact. When you get your TPC report and you have questions, you can definitely contact me when that happens. So in getting started, the first project I'm going to talk about is I-94 in St. Croix County. So this project runs from just outside of Hudson to right near Roberts. It's about 6 miles long. And the original, first I'm going to talk about what the original scope of this project was, then I'm going to tell you what we're planning to do now. So the original project was 6 miles long. It was a 4-lane divided highway. And in 2014, we finished an environmental document and had a finding of no significant impact on this project. So and at the time, the project was to be expanding this project from 4 to 6 lanes. And why did we do that? And we're asking for a little something different later. Well, one of the things, what was important at that time is in the late 1990s and early 2000s, we had 3% actual annual traffic growth, which is very high for that area. And that's part of the reason why it went forward. And there was also some structural deficiencies on the roadway and bridge replacement needs. But what's happened kind of since then, I think the biggest thing that we've noticed is the traffic projections. So I talked about the 3% growth in the 90s and 2000s. Well, and our forecast for that was also different. So the forecast projected growth of 2 to 2.5% per year for the next 20 years. And that meant that the volumes would be up to 70,000 by 2034 and 50,000 by 2020. Now, we did a new traffic model, which was completed in 2020, and it used some data from 2018 for the whole model. We actually did some checks to make sure that we didn't need to redo the model, but it's still accurate. And what we found is in 2018, the actual volumes were 43,700 vehicles per day. And our new model shows that growth is projected to only be about 0.5% to 1% in the next 20 years. So where does that put us? That puts us that the volumes in 2036, kind of the design year, would only be 50,000 vehicles per day. So you look at that, in 2036, we're expecting now to be 50,000 vehicles per day, where back then we thought we'd be at 50,000 vehicles per day in 2020. So it makes a big difference on what you're going to say you're going to do. So our updated model indicates that congestion doesn't reach truly undesirable levels until 2040. So there's no immediate need for capacity expansion. But once we got to that point, we wanted to say, well, it may be not capacity expansion, but what is the right thing to do for this project? So we did a benefit cost analysis of some alternatives. So I'm going to do a little explanation. Perpetuation is kind of doing small resurface type projects until you just physically can't do them anymore, and then you would have to replace the project. Replace in kind is putting back what's already there right now, instead of doing expansion. And we also looked at expansion options. So when we finished a benefit cost, the replace in kind versus perpetuation, the benefit cost was negative 0.3, and that's really bad. It's saying that you should just do small projects and keep things moving. When we looked at the benefit cost versus of expansion in 2030 versus perpetuation, it was 0.9. So it was not quite 1, which makes it positive, but also we want maybe on an expansion type project, we have other projects that have little higher benefit costs than even 1. So by 2040, the benefit cost is 1.6, which is a positive one. But what we're saying now is expansion need is not there in the foreseeable future. And so there's more effective options at this time. The most effective option is perpetuation. And so what we're saying is WSDOT has the flexibility to move forward with perpetuation at this time, reconsidering potential corridor expansion and enumeration as a major project later, when expansion may be more clearly warranted, depending upon the traffic growth that actually occurs. So at this time, WSDOT is requesting that the TPC approval to remove the study from the approved list of major study projects.
Are there any questions for Jeff at this point? Let's give it a second here. I'm going to check my chat. I don't see anything. Okay. If there are no questions for Jeff, then I will ask the commission if there's a motion to accept the department's recommendation to remove the I-94 US 12 to Wisconsin 65 study in St. Croix County from the list of approved major highway study projects.
This is Rep. Krug. I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
This is Rep. Spreitzer. I'll second.
Okay. We will have a roll call vote for this, so I'll read out the roll call, and Ned Grady will record and report out the result. Senator Hansen. I'm sorry. Oh, aye. Yeah, I'm sorry. Before, say aye to approve the motion, no to not approve the motion. Senator Hansen.
Aye.
Senator Carpenter.
Aye.
Senator Petrowski.
Aye.
Senator Markline.
Aye.
Representative Krug.
Aye.
Representative Spreitzer.
Aye.
Representative Plummer.
Aye.
Deputy Chief of Staff Barb Wooster as a proxy for Governor Evers.
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Servey.
Aye.
Director Allison Bustler.
Aye.
And Executive Director Timothy Hanna.
Aye.
I believe that's everyone, Ned.
Yes, we had 11 votes in favor, 0 votes against.
Okay, the motion passes. Jeff, do you want to begin your next presentation?
Yes. Okay. My next presentation is Highway 12, Elkhorn to Whitewater. This is also a study project. So where is this project? It runs between Whitewater and Elkhorn on Highway 12. It's approximately 17.9 miles long, and it's a 2-lane undivided rural arterial. So a little background on this project was we began a study in 2014 in response to a legislative directive. And from that directive, we prepared a preliminary purpose and need report. So from that purpose and need report, we concluded there was a lack of strong need. There was still need on the corridor, but not strong need for corridor-wide improvements or for construction of a new freeway on an alternate alignment. So what we did is we reached a decision to suspend that study in July of 2016. And why did we suspend the study? It was due to there was some other competing statewide needs that we felt were maybe more warranted. And we felt this corridor could be maintained satisfactorily with state highway rehabilitation type projects. So, but the one thing we sold ourselves is there safety problems that need to be addressed? And so because of that, we didn't ask for the project to be removed. We did a safety study. And the safety study completed 2 safety certification documents, one for the east-west leg of the project and one for the north-south leg of the project. And what came of the safety analysis? So the safety recommendations that came out of the analysis said that the fixes for safety could be completed outside of the major program with just rehabilitation type projects. And those projects include installing centerline and shoulder rumble strips, clearing site triangles, applying high friction surface treatment to the roadways, and adding some supplemental warning signs. So we plan on doing those projects, and you can see on the bottom of the screen, there's a list of projects that we are going to do in the future to address those safety needs and pavement needs. But with that, we are still recommending removal of this project as a major highway study project. Is there any questions on this project? All right, Justin?
I see looked like Joe was talking, but I couldn't hear him. I still can't hear you, Joe. There, speak, Joe.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There we go. Now we can hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to point out, Jeff mentioned there wasn't strong need. To be clear, there's some congestion on this corridor. But it's congestion that when our statewide level of service engineer looks at this, it's congestion that when we look 20 years, we don't see it getting much worse. It's pretty flat. The other thing about it is that it's not untenable congestion, and it's highly recreational congestion. And in addition to that, when we look at speeds where this congestion is, we're still traveling at or above posted speeds. Even in the peak hours, we don't see speeds reducing in any marked way because of the congestion. So it's not that there isn't congestion out there, there is. But when we look statewide, we have 600 miles that pop congestion thresholds. We can't afford to have a perfect level of service for 600 miles. So we're looking at those that are particularly problematic, where congestion is causing safety issues, or that it's simply untenable in terms of causing breakdown conditions and significant queues. And we aren't seeing that here. So I wanted to be clear about that.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I'll give one last opportunity for any questions for Jeff or Joe. Okay, hearing none. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there a question? No, okay. At this time, I'll ask if there is a motion to accept the department's recommendation to remove the US 12, Wisconsin 67 to Wisconsin 59 study in Walworth County from the list of approved major highway study projects.
So moved, Carpenter.
Is there a second?
Second.
If there isn't any discussion, we'll move into the roll call vote following the same procedure as the first vote we took. Senator Hansen.
Aye.
Justin?
I'm sorry. Yes, Craig.
But do we have the motion was by Carpenter, seconded by Markline? Do we have that? Who made the motion second?
I'll turn to Ned. Did you capture who made the motion and seconded?
I did collect that information, yes.
Okay,
And Secretary was correct. Senator Carpenter moved the motion and Senator Markline was the second.
Okay. I will begin again with the roll call vote. Senator Hansen.
Aye.
Senator Carpenter.
Aye.
Senator Petrowski.
Aye.
Senator Markline.
Aye.
Representative Krug.
Aye.
Representative Spreitzer.
Aye.
Representative Plummer.
Aye.
Commissioner Survey.
Aye.
Director Bussler.
Aye.
Executive Director Hannah.
Aye.
Deputy Chief of Staff Barb Wooster, sorry.
Aye.
I believe that's everyone.
We
Nat,
have
can you?
11 votes in favor and 0 votes opposed.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to move on to my next project is I-3990 from Madison to Wisconsin Dells. Just if you're following along in your book, we are on tab 5, page 93 in your binder. So this project is a very long project that we've recently restarted. It's a 63-mile corridor separated into 3 segments for analysis. So the segments are the Madison section down at the bottom. There is the Wisconsin River section here, and that actually goes a little bit up on I-39 after the split to handle so it can address some flooding issues, which I'll talk about later. And then it goes from that 3990 split up to Wisconsin Dells.
Jeff,
Yeah?
can you hear? This is Joe. I want to just be clear. You said we recently restarted. We have not officially restarted the environmental study. We've done an operational and safety, and we plan to restart the environmental study.
Oh, yes, very good. Thank you. Thank you for correcting me on that, Joe. So the route importance of this project is, if you look at I-90, it's the longest east-west interstate in the country, 3,020 miles traveling from Boston all the way through to Seattle. And this stretch is the longest 3 interstate corridor in the country, with 39, 90, and 94 all running together. Now, this corridor is important for many reasons, and one of the reasons is for freight. And so right now, if you look at the growth of freight in this corridor from 2015 to 2019, it has grown from 5 to 11%. If you look at the freight that's going through this corridor on an annual basis, based on 2017 dollars, it's $116 billion going through the corridor. The average number of trucks per day is about 13,800 trucks per day, and that percentage makes up to 25% of the traffic in the northern segment of the job. I have a little fun chart here that tells you a little bit what's traveling on this route. And a couple of highlights are we've moved $900 million worth of cheese on an annual basis, $1.25 billion worth of bread. I'm a little surprised bread is more than cheese. 3 million tons of grain, 1.7 billion pounds of milk. So a lot of stuff is following through this corridor. So this corridor is also very important for tourism, and tourism is very important to Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, tourism was a $21.6 billion in sales for the entire state in 2018, and the counties in this project make up nearly 20% of the state's tourism. And this project is also a gateway to other recreational areas within Wisconsin, like Wausau, Minocqua, Bayfield, Superior. So this chart here kind of shows how much tourism is spent in these three counties. And you're not really surprised to see that Sauk County has $1.4 billion with the Dells there. Dane County has $2.2 billion of tourism. And Columbia County also has $203 million. I'm going to talk about level of service now. And if you're looking at the right-hand side of the slide, you see what are characteristics of level of service. It's kind of like a letter grade for how congested a roadway is. And I want to clarify congested in a normal sense, not when there's an accident, just a normal sense of congestion. And it's kind of like a letter grade a little bit in that A is the best and F is the worst. But I've never gotten an E grade while I was in school. But if you look, so level of service A is free flow traffic with no delays. Level of service B is light moderate traffic with no delays. And level of service C is steady traffic with just minimal delays. Now when we're getting more into what this project has is we're getting to level of service D, where speeds begin to decline and there's minimal to significant delays. Level of service E, where traffic is near capacity and you have significant delays. And level of service F, where it's the heaviest congestion and considerable delays. So that's the right-hand side, which kind of talks about what are the levels of level of service. And now we're going to jump to the left-hand side of the screen where we talk about each of the segments of this project, the Madison and Wisconsin River and Wisconsin Dells, and what do they look like for congestion today. Now, you may notice that level of service D is highlighted as undesirable for Wisconsin Dells, but level of service D for Madison is not highlighted as undesirable. And why is that? It is because in urban areas, you're generally expecting a little bit more congestion. So because people in those areas expect more congestion, we kind of account for that in how we handle things. But what really comes to show in this corridor is right now we may be level of service C and D in this corridor in 2020. But if you look by 2030, we're level of service E and D and D. By 2040, we're F and D and E. And then by 2050, we're F and E and E. And these are really high congestion rates for this area, and it's something we really have to be concerned about. And remember, this is more normal congestion, not dealing with accidents.
And Jeff, with that, Jeff said not dealing with accidents, normal congestion. And when you have a notice in Madison, that D is 4.6, and D in the numbers is between 4 and 5. When we get to mid to upper D, oftentimes with mid to upper D, when you have incidents like accidents and or weather, bad weather, we can start to get some really difficult queuing and delays with the incidents. And Jeff will develop that in a future slide.
Yep, thank you, Joe. So this next slide is kind of, the picture on the right shows what an average what a peak day looks like today. And what I'm really trying to show you on this slide, without getting into too much depth, if you look on the left-hand side of the screen here, the average day today has maybe 98,000 cars in Madison. A peak day today has 125,000 cars. Now, if you move forward to 2050 in Madison, look at where an average day is. So envision what the worst days, the peak days, the Fridays and the Sundays are today, and that is what the average day will be in 2050. And the peak day will be 28% higher at 160,000 vehicles per day in the Madison area. Now, the Dells section is just a little bit less than that, where a peak day today is 68,000 cars per day. By 2050, a peak average day will be 54,000 cars per day, just a little bit less than the peak today. But the peak day in 2050 is 22% higher than the current peak traffic is today. So a lot of you may be asking, when we talk about traffic volumes, how much does COVID make a difference? We have a lot less traffic now? Do we not need to do these projects? Well, we did some looking into that, and overall traffic volumes are down even on the interstates. So on this route, I-90, when we compared September 2020 to September 19, total traffic volumes are down 8%. But we started looking at what's important to this corridor, and what's important to the corridor is the recreational peak traffic and the truck traffic. And those we found have both recovered. So if you look, the peak hour traffic on Labor Day from 2019 to 2020 was actually up 1% in 2020. So it's very promising, or it's very telling. And the truck traffic is up 4% from September 2019 to September 2020. So what we can say is the long-term work from home trends are not likely to affect the recreational or freight traffic travel. Now we talked about regular traffic, but what we care about is reliability. And what this slide is saying is 90% of summer Sundays had a crash in the corridor. And crashes double to triple the travel time, and congestion on summer Sundays can last for up to 6 hours. If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that the average traffic time today, 2019, from Madison to the Dells is about 50 minutes. Well, if we have an incident, it can take 2 to 3 times that, which is 100 to 150 minutes to get there. But by 2015, without an expansion project, the normal peak hour travel times are expected to increase by 65%. Take 30 minutes longer. So a normal trip from Madison to the Dells would be 80 minutes. And if we have crashes, it could take much longer. 2 to 2.5 times could take over 2.5 hours to get from Madison to the Dells. And that has an impact on the tourism portion of this route and the freight portion of this route. So how is corridor safety right now? Well, the crashes are increasing in this facility. So remember, freeways are actually one of our safest facilities we have. When there's high volumes, there can still be crashes associated with it. So if you look at some of the traffic volumes went from 58,500 in 2014, increased by 12% up to 65,300 in 2018. But during that same 4-year time frame, crashes went from 398 in 2014 up to 568 in 2018. And just some fast facts on crashes: there's 1 to 2 crashes per day in the corridor, 3 to 4 injuries per week, and 1 fatality every 3 months within this corridor. So a lot of the crashes in this corridor, 48% of the total crashes are rear-end or sideswipe crashes. And rear-end or sideswipe crashes in the same direction are generally crashes that are related to construction. And just to let you know when the crashes are happening, even though it's a small amount of time.
Jeff, congestion, not construction, right?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So 40% of the crashes in this corridor did occur during the peak travel times. And as volumes increase, the number of congestion-related crashes are also expected to increase if we don't get a major project in this corridor. So now we talked about volumes and crashes, and the next thing I'm going to talk about is secondary crashes. If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, those are 2 actual pictures of crashes that have occurred on this corridor. And right now, there's been 238 days in 2019 that experienced crashes. There's been 27 days that experienced secondary crashes. And what is a secondary crash? It's when there's already a crash on the corridor and cars are backing up, and because there's that differential in speed, a second crash happens behind it. And 84% of the secondary crashes occur during the peak travel periods. And you are 70% more likely to be injured in a secondary crash. So, and the stats on that are 36% of secondary crashes resulted in injuries, while only 21% of corridor regular crashes resulted in injuries. And this is important because in 2019, half of the summer Sunday peaks experienced secondary crashes. And again, as volumes increase, we expect this to increase as well. Now, besides safety, the pavement on this corridor needs work as well. So 100% of this corridor needs pavement improvements before 2035. 60% of the corridor will be between 38 and 45 years old by 2030. And if we don't have a major project, 17 of the next 30 years will have a pavement projects projected on them. And it's getting more and more difficult. This corridor is a really hard one to get work done because of the tourism. We like to do projects before Memorial Day and after Labor Day, so we can get it done without too much impact to the public. But some of these projects are getting more and more difficult to do, and some of the projects take more time, and it's difficult to get it done during those time frames. And the structures on the corridor as well, there's 109 bridges in the corridor, and 3 of them are currently structurally deficient. 48% of the bridges need replacement or a new deck before 2050, which includes 40 bridge complete replacements and 12 deck replacements. And one note about this for traffic is almost all the interstate bridges are not wide enough to maintain all lanes for traffic staging, so we'd have to reduce traffic. Now, if we did have this project ultimately gets built, we would have a definitive corridor improvement plan to strategically sequence the projects. And this will enable us to minimize impacts of the traveling public, freight haulers, and businesses, and to maximize the benefit of construction funds through strategic packaging of the projects. Now, I talked a little bit on the first slide about flooding, and it's interesting that there's been 2 flooding events since 2008 that resulted in interstate closures, full and partial. The picture on the right is showing 1994, just north of the split where 39 goes off, and you're kind of looking south here. You can see Cascade Ski Hill on the right here, and we had a full closure of that route in 2008. Now, in 2018, we had some partial closures of 39, and you can see this picture is showing the Wisconsin National Guard sandbagging 39 there. So there's a lot of resiliency, and we want to make sure that we address these issues with this project, because it's the one time when you're reconstructing is the time to address those issues. The other part of corridor resiliency and where this route is it's really, there's not very good detour routes around it to get around. You look at some of our detour routes, alternate routes are to take the belt line that's already kind of congested up and around to Highway 12 and back to the project. And the other alternate route is Highway 51, which actually goes and through Highway 16, you go through downtown Portage and 16 back. And so these projects, the alt routes are not good with the volumes of traffic and the amount of trucks. It's just very difficult to envision those routes being able to handle things if there was a flooding incident. And one of the other things is most of this route is a freeway, but right in Sauk City, there's a signal there. And then when you have any incident on the interstate right now, things in Sauk City get really, really congested as well. So for this project, infrastructure, safety, and capacity needs of this key recreation and freight corridor warrant a restart of the environmental document process. The department is restarting the study and will develop alternatives and cost. So does this mean you don't have another chance to look at this project? It does not. So we will complete the study and then come back to you for if we recommend enumeration for construction in a future date. So once our environmental document is complete, we would come back to you for this project. Any questions on this project?
Looks like we have, we have one hand raised. Tim, Hannah.
Good morning. Hi, Jeff.
Hey.
I don't know if this is the right time to bring up this question, but Secretary Thompson in his opening remarks talked about the work being done on alternative modes of travel and kind of looking at the future and everything. And then you come to this and there's just a lot of data on traffic volumes and projections of traffic volumes. So when you're doing projection of traffic volumes, are you taking into consideration that work that's being done, thinking about alternative modes of transportation in the future? And if so, how is that factored in?
So I can start with that. So the answer is yes, with a caveat that is extremely difficult at this time. Just being candid, because for example, no one, we just recently, we have one of our forecasters just received his PhD with an emphasis on traffic forecasting, and he has studied and is studying, and we've got him participating in how connected and automated vehicle traffic will affect forecasts. But that being said, it's not a hard science like Newton's law at this point, because we don't know exactly how CAV will be deployed nationally, et cetera. So we are thinking about it. As an agency, we want to position the state to take advantage of connected and automated vehicle technologies that exist today. You know, CAV doesn't mean you have to be fully automated. Adaptive cruise control, lane departure assist, we can get a lot of safety benefits, but we'd get a lot more mobility benefits if everything was fully automated. So we are, the answer is we're thinking about it, yes. Is there a definitive hard science tool? No. So we have to be careful. In this particular situation, one of the things that Jeff was showing is that left unaddressed, this corridor will become a very clogged artery. But that being said, even today, where you can see with the crashes that are congested related, we actually need to do something today, and that will put us in a good position long term, even with CAV. So there's kind of a lot of goo there. I hope, Mr. Hanna, that I got at what your interest was or question.
Right, and I'm not really questioning this project. I get it. I just was looking for an opportunity to kind of bring that in, and I thought this is so heavily factored on volume, but I get that it's a long stretch, carries a lot of freight, and volume, whether it's automated or not, it's probably gonna be there. When you get in a more urbanized area and people have more choices, and it's people having those choices, and it's not moving a lot of freight and everything, projecting traffic volumes in a time when people are thinking about alternative modes of transportation, I think could be more difficult. And I just wanted to give you a chance to talk about how you're integrating that into your thinking when looking at these major projects.
Justin, if I could jump in here quick. Tim, I really appreciate the question, and I appreciate the opportunity to just talk briefly about that, because you're right. I went out of my way in the opening remarks to talk about that, and I think there's several things that we need to look at on projects like this. When we come out of the pandemic, obviously traffic's going to come up some again when we come out of the pandemic, but teleworking moving forward is certainly going to have an impact. To the extent we don't know yet, but we want to be looking at that. Then what is connected and automated vehicles going to do? And we want to be providing more options to do things that we can provide more, despite any of those, more alternatives to people without adding more lanes necessarily, more capacity when it works. So I appreciate, and if you look at the last TPC meeting, we brought forward 3 projects to not move forward on, and none to move forward on enumeration. Today we're bringing forward 2 not to move forward on, and only 2, and even the 2 we're asking you to move forward on today, neither of them are capacity expansions. So I just wanted to point that out, and I really do appreciate. I have asked our people to look through the lens of all of these before we bring anything forward. What I want to point out about this one is this is a study. We're not bringing this forward to you right now for enumeration based on 2050 projections or anything like that. We're just restarting a study. And like the 94 St. Croix one that you voted on already, once we went through that study and got later on, we ended up changing our projections because we did see differences from where we started. So we do believe that we need to get the study moving. so that we can look at those options. And, a couple of years from now, some of this hopefully will be a little bit more clear than it is now. And at that point, we'll probably be coming back to you and telling you what we've learned from that study.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, in the interest of time, I want to keep us moving along. This meeting is scheduled to end at 11, and we have a couple more presentations to get through. So, Jeff, you have about 30 minutes or so.
Okay. The next projects I'm going to talk about are projects that we're asking to be approved as high-cost major projects, starting with Wisconsin River Bridges project. And if you're following along in your book, we're on tab 6, page 109. So the Wisconsin River Bridges have an estimated year of expenditure cost of $146 million, $141 million in current dollars, and they meet the requirements, as Joe pointed out, of a high-cost major project. Now, where is this project located? It's right in the middle of the project I talked about for my last presentation. It's part of that 3990-94 corridor, and it's all in Columbia County. So, because it's within the same corridor, I'm not going to talk about the route importance slides because we hit those all in the previous presentation. So I'll move on to the bridge and the condition of this bridge and why we feel like we need to move forward with this bridge now. So the bridge was originally built in 1961, and just a fun fact, Bart Starr was the quarterback at that time for the Packers. We had some girder repair in 75 and 81, and then we had a big fix in 1984 where they built a new deck and a new pier in the center so that it increased the capacity from 2 lanes in each direction to 3 lanes in each direction with that capacity expansion. In 1993, Brett Favre was our quarterback, and we had a deck repair project. We had girder repair projects in 95 and 2002. By 2012, Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback, and we had girder repair, deck repair, and pier repair. Now, what we're hearing is we have to do something on this bridge by like 2025 or 2026. It really needs to be done. And why does it need to be done? I have some pictures showing some of the condition of the roadway. So for the girders themselves on the project, so we have some thinning of girders as the steel rusts off and we have problems there. We have loss of protective coating over the steel elements and the connections. We also have, for our secondary steel members in between the girders, we have some heavy rust causing warping at the connections. And we also have this picture on the left here is showing the underside of the bridge deck. And there's some pack rust has formed between the pack elements, causing bulging and distortion, leading to additional stress and cracking of the concrete deck. So this is the underside of where you're driving. Right up above this is where you would be driving on your vehicle. So the condition of the bridge is not in very good shape. So you may ask the question, we're asking for a lot of money for this project. Can the bridge be just repaired without reconstructing? And the answer is it can be done, but we don't think it's a wise option. Like I talked about earlier, the original bridge was built in 1961 and the outsides here shown. And in 1984, they built this center pier and did the whole redeck. And so you can see we got about 40 years of life out of that deck right now. But if we did just repairs, we would need to do a deck replacement in 25 or 26 because it needs to get done. We'd have structural steel repairs, bearing replacement, other things. In fall of 27, we'd have an overlay. Fall of 35, we'd have structural steel repairs. But then the big problem is the piers are in bad shape and they need full replacement by 2045. So instead of getting 40 years out of the deck, we'd only be getting 20 years out of this bridge deck, and it just does not make financial sense to do so. And even besides that, repairing it versus reconstructing, the repairs would occur over multiple seasons within 10 years. And some of these projects traffic would be reduced to 2 lanes during construction, and they couldn't just be done before Memorial Day or after Labor Day. They would have to be done during the summer. And lane closures during the summer are expected to cause queues averaging 7 miles and could reach up to 40 miles. So based on that, we have a preferred alternative, which is the east alternative. And some of the benefits of this alternative are there's no relocations required for this alternative. It avoids the new ATC pole line that went through there, so there's no impacts to that. It does allow for a future 4th lane of traffic if one was built with the other project, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. And because of some of those construction issues, the benefit cost on this project is 1.47. And I would say the benefit cost is still a little low because it does not get, the benefit cost does not count the widening. So once the widening would happen and could reduce congestion, the benefits would go up quite a bit. But we can't take them because the roadway is not being widened at this time. It's just the bridge project itself. So one of the things that I think is pretty neat about this project as an engineer is the current year dollars is 141 million. Now in February of 2020, we held a workshop to look at the cost estimate and see where things are. And because of that workshop, they came up with ideas that we could change the staging of the project. And through that workshop, we came up with cost savings of about $24 million. And I think it's really important that that happened. The engineer in me is going to kind of go through this picture on the right that shows what the construction staging is. So the staging for stage 1, you can see the traffic, 3 lanes, 3 cars going northbound here, 3 cars going southbound on the existing structure. So we would build new northbound lanes over here. We would put the 3 northbound lanes plus 1 southbound lane on that 1 new bridge, keep the 2 southbound lanes on the existing northbound structure. Then we could remove the center pier and the southbound structure, construct a new southbound structure. Then we could remove the old center pier and have traffic right where it goes. So the beauty of this, what changed in the staging is that now the southbound lanes you can see are right where the southbound lanes are before, which meant that both ends of the project could tie in much quicker, which was a lot of that $24 million of savings on this project. So sorry I got into a little engineering detail there, but it's exciting for me. So based on that, WISDOT recommends the TPC approve this study for construction as a high-cost major project. And to be able to do that, we had to have our environmental assessment signed, which was done on November 5th. And with TPC approval, we could begin final design in spring of 2021 and begin construction in 2024. Any questions?
Just scanning the list here. I'm not seeing any questions. Okay. With that, I'll ask if there is a motion to accept the department's recommendation to approve for construction the I-39/90/94 Wisconsin River Bridge project in Columbia County, adding the project to the Major Highway Development Program.
Senator Hansen moves.
Senator Hansen moves. Is there a second?
Markline.
Is that Senator Carpenter?
No.
So moved.
Oh, Mark Lane. Okay, there. I'm sorry. Mark Lane seconds. Okay. I will begin the roll call vote now. Senator Hansen?
Aye.
Senator Carpenter?
Aye.
Senator Petrowski?
Aye.
Senator Markline?
Aye.
Representative Krug?
Aye.
Representative Spreitzer?
Aye.
Representative Plummer?
Aye.
Deputy Chief of Staff Wooster?
Aye.
Commissioner Survey,
Aye.
Director Bustler,
Aye.
Executive Director Hannah.
Aye.
Ned, can you report out the count?
We had 11 votes in favor, 0 votes against.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to go on to the next project that we're recommending for approval as a high-cost major. It's the Highway 51 corridor study from Stoughton to McFarland. Now, this project kind of runs from the belt line and in Madison, kind of goes by Lake Wabisa, through the village of McFarland, down along Lake Higanza, around the city of Stoughton, and out to the interstate to 3990. So this project had a different scope. Originally, it was a traditional major that we were going to expand the project. And the original needs of the study were to increase the capacity, expand to 4 lanes, construct interchanges, remove driveways, and remove left turn lanes from throughout the project. So I show this picture because we were expanding to 4 lanes, and you look at what a 4-lane divided highway looks like, and that cross section is really wide. The cross section on the screen from clear zone to clear zone is 176 feet wide, so it's a very large footprint. And the original scope was to have a 4-lane facility all the way down through Highway 51. It included a bypass of Stoughton, which I'll talk about in a little bit, reconstructing through downtown Stoughton, and then a 2-lane facility where volumes are lower from Stoughton out to the interstate. Here's a little picture of some of the bypass options we talked about. And I would say that area of the bypass is the ones that had the most controversy within the project. So the original scope of the project, this is kind of a summary of where we were at in 2014. So the total cost of the project was, with all that expansion, was $265 to $280 million, which included 22 to 33 potential relocations and 293 to 320 acres of land that would be converted to right-of-way. And I think the important part is how we care about agriculture, and the agriculture had 216 to 256 acres of land converted. Now, if we took those dollars we had in 2014 and converted them to today's dollars for a comparison, it would be $352 to $372 million to do that higher scope. But what we're saying now is the project I'll talk to you about in a little bit, our preferred alternative, which is not expansion, is about, in today's dollars, is $174.2 million. And as I go through my slides, you'll see how we get to there and what we're doing. So why did we revise the scope? One, it was a high expansion cost. There's significant impacts to lands that I talked about. And we found that expansion was not necessary to address some of those pressing safety issues. And I'll talk about how we'll do that in a little bit. And by lowering costs on this project, WISDOT could direct funds to other critical projects throughout the state. And what does the current purpose and need do that we adjusted? It addresses safety, it addresses the pavement condition, it addresses the travel demand, it does improve bike and pedestrian safety and utility in high-use urban areas, and it preserves the corridor for long-term planning. So one thing on this corridor that was real important to us is that we addressed safety. The one thing we heard from the communities, especially Stoughton and McFarland, and the public, is they do not feel safe getting onto or off of Highway 51 during peak hours. So what things we've done in this project, we'll do in this project, is to add some roundabouts. And because this was really a safety issue, it wasn't just a concern from them, but 40% of the corridor is above the statewide average for fatal and accident crash rate. And 23% of the corridor is at least 50% above the statewide crash rate. And that's this area here in red, kind of along Lake Higanza and coming into the north part of Stoughton. And I'll talk a little bit more about the safety, what we're going to do for that in a little bit. But the pavement on this project is in really bad shape. So you can see here, this is some very poor pavement in a rural section here, and it may not look quite as bad, but the joints are widening here in Stoughton, and there's a lot, that pavement is in really bad shape. So the majority of the pavement is over 40 years old. It has extensive joint failure and cracking, and resurfacing and reconditioning is really not a very cost-effective measure anymore to fix this route. So what is the current project scope that we're going to do now, and what are we proposing? So right now, this is already 4 lanes right here. Then we would go to a 2-lane facility right here all the way through until we get to Stoughton. Now there is one little bit that's widened, and that's from County B into Stoughton is widened to 4 lanes because it is congested and busy. And then through Stoughton, we would just reconstruct what's there. And then we'd have a 2-lane option to 51. Now is when I'm going to talk a little bit about the safety concerns we had in here, is where people can't get onto or off of the route. So there's going to be roundabouts included. There's a roundabout at Exchange Street up here. There's a roundabout at B and AB. There's a roundabout at B, and there's roundabouts at Roby Road, 138, and Whole Avenue. And what those do is provide a spot where somebody could get access. Or if they're in between a roundabout, they could get onto the road there, get to the next roundabout, turn around, and go in the direction they want to go. So we're not doing capacity expansion, but we are addressing safety on this route. So what does the new project look like? So we talked about this earlier, that the cost now is only $174.1 million. There's only 2 potential relocations and only 70 acres of land converted to right-of-way. And look at the agricultural land went way down to only 40 to 50 acres of agricultural land converted. Now we did a benefit cost in this project, and the benefit cost came out as 1, which is good. It's a positive benefit cost, but benefit costs are much better on projects where you have benefits like you have expansion and can reduce congestion. But I would say that the benefit cost on here is greater than 1, because if we don't do this project, the pavement is in such bad shape that there would be a new construction project every 1.5 years for the next 50 years. And for the 1,271 businesses that are along this corridor with 1 mile, that's pretty unrealistic for them to think about every 1.5 years having construction and delays and handling that. So where is the project schedule? So we had some challenges on this project, and one of them would be on October 6th, we had a virtual public involvement meeting, which we had to figure out how to do that in accomplishment, but we did get that done. In November 24th of this year, we had an approved environmental assessment, which we needed before we could take this project to you. Now today is the TPC meeting, and if the project is approved, we could begin construction as early as 2025. Now, I want to say that even if this project wasn't done, we knew the safety issues on this project were big and extensive, and those roundabouts that improve safety are very important. And we couldn't wait to see what would happen with this to make some of those safety improvements. So I just wanted to let you know that in 2022, and they'll be funded probably outside of this majors program, are 3 roundabouts at Roby Road, 138, and Whole Avenue in Stoughton. So those will be funded with traditional means. And there's another roundabout that's already scheduled for 2024 at County B and AB. And if that's approved today, we could use the majors funding on that. But I just wanted to show that no matter what, we felt like these needed to be done. So based on that, WISDOT recommends that the TPC approve this study for construction as a high-cost major project.
And I just want to qualify this. This was when Jeff says this study, this was not an official major study project. It's a high cost major that we had approval to do environmental study on, just to be clear. Oh no, it isn't official.
Yeah, I was going to say, Joe,
I'm confused. What am I doing?
It was an official study that we've now
All right.
downgraded
Yeah.
to do as a high cost major project.
Yeah, my apologies.
Are there any questions for Jeff? Okay, hearing none, then I will ask if there's a motion to accept the department's recommendation to approve for construction the US 51 Stoughton to McFarland project in Dane County, adding the project to the Major Highway Development Program.
So moved, Carpenter.
Is there a second?
Second, Senator Hansen.
Okay. All right, with that, then if there's no discussion, I will call the roll vote. Senator Hansen,
Aye.
Senator Carpenter,
Aye.
Senator Petrowski,
Aye.
Senator Markline,
Aye.
Representative Krug,
Aye.
Representative Spreitzer,
Aye.
Representative Plummer,
Aye.
Deputy Chief of Staff Barb Wooster,
Aye.
Commissioner Survey,
Aye.
Director Bustler,
Aye.
Executive Director Hannah.
Aye.
We have 11 votes in favor, 0 votes against.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you.
All right. Now I get to talk about some project highlights. I'm going to let you know about some major and mega program projects that are completed or nearing completion. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is 10 and 10-441 in Winnebago County. We began construction in 2014. The main line was open to traffic in 11/15 of 2019, and it's 5.5 miles long. This project was completed at initial budget estimate. It reconstructed the I-41 and 441 system interchange and added a couple of new movements. It added Highway 41 northbound to Highway 10 westbound right here. And it also added Highway 10 eastbound, comes this way to go to I-41 northbound. And it also included the first diverging diamond in northeast Wisconsin on WIS 441 and 10 in Oneida Street. And I have a really neat picture of this diverging diamond right here. So if you remember at the last TPC meeting, I explained how these interchanges work, but they're very well liked by the public and they're very efficient. So it's working very well there. The next project I'm going to talk about is 18151 Verona Road in Dane County. And this project had a couple phases, but it began construction in 2013 and main line was open to traffic in 11/15 of 2019 with work going on this year on Raymond Road. So this project also increased bridge clearance at the Seminole Highway overpass, which I know from my knowledge as a planning chief was hit many times on the Beltline. It includes the second and third single point interchanges in Wisconsin, which is one is right here, the Beltline and Verona Road, and there's also one at Verona Road and County PD. And so remember, this type of intersection is kind of a standard signalized intersection underneath the bridge, but they kind of stretch out the intersection so that left turns from opposite directions can go at the same time. And that improves efficiency a lot on that intersection. So on this project, we also had some multimodal transportation things, including you can see right here, there is a walkway underneath this so they can connect communities to businesses here. This project itself, I just wanted to say stage one was named the 2017 Top Road Project in North America by Roads and Bridges magazine. And that focused on the single point urban interchange and how that improved capacity and safety and how things were handled during construction. And the project also met the multimodal needs of vehicles, bikes, and pedestrian during construction and into the future. The next project I'm going to talk about is 3990 from Highway 12 to Illinois in Dane and Rock counties. And this project began construction in 2013, and the main line will be open to traffic in fall of 2021, so next year. It's 45 miles long. we reconstructed the 3990 interchange and 43 system interchange in Beloit, and we're also upgrading the 3990 Beltline interchange to utilize existing infrastructure. Now this picture is showing the I-43 interchange, and this one's kind of exciting to me. This is the Beltline interchange, and I just want to show quickly how traffic goes through here. So southbound traffic will stay on its current path right now, go just where we're going. But the one thing we don't like is left exits. And right now, northbound traffic goes this way, and there's a left exit to go to the Beltline, and that's a big major move. But the creative approach to fixing it was, now in the future, the mainline traffic will go here where you can see the dirt here, go across the new bridges and continue to go on forward for northbound traffic, where this, what used to be mainline traffic, will now be a ramp that is a right exit, so it's not as confusing and much safer. And then that ramp will continue on to the Beltline. So this fix was very cost effective and minimized impact to traffic. The next project I'm going to talk about is the I-94 North-South project in Kenosha, Racine, and Milwaukee counties. Now, this stage of this project began in June of 2018, and for this stage, it was completed in 2 years, which was the fastest mega project in DOT history. It was open to traffic in fall of 2019 and is 18.5 miles long. This project was completed on time and under budget. But to make that all happen, we had to have a lot of support to get this happen. WISDOT applied for and received $160 million in infra grants and had $252.4 million of general obligation bonding to match the grants supplied by the state of Wisconsin. The next project I'm going to talk about is the Zoo Interchange project. The Zoo began in 2012. And the Zoo Core interchange opened to traffic in August of 2018 and was under budget. Now, the north leg of the Zoo interchange was just let this October and is expected to be open to traffic in fall of 2023. Now, even to date, the crashes in the Zoo Core are reduced by 34%, and we expect those crashes to be reduced even more when the north leg of the Zoo is opened and possibly when the east-west project is completed as well. So that's all I have on the highlights projects. Are there any questions on those? Okay, if no questions, I'll move on to, or do you have something, Justin?
No, I was just going to say there doesn't look to be any questions, so.
Okay. The next project I'm going to talk about is the I-94 East-West Freeway Study. And so this project, in my mind, when I think about it, it's the project that connects the Zoo interchange to the Marquette interchange and goes by County Stadium. So that's the limits of the project. Now this project is in a very important area. So 26% of the people, 32% of the jobs, and 41% of the business in the 7-county region shown in this map, a 5-mile radius, are within, those people, jobs, and businesses are located within a 5-mile radius of this project. And within a 1-mile buffer zone of the corridor, there are 2,700 businesses with an annual sales of $9.2 billion, employing 69,000 people. And actually 24.5 billion in annual freight tonnage is shipped through this corridor. So one thing this corridor does handle is it kind of removes the bottleneck. So it modernizes infrastructure to improve quality and efficiency, and it really connects some big investments that we've made in the future. In the past, I mean, we've invested $825 million in the Marquette interchange. We invested $1.6 billion in the Zoo interchange, and this project would connect those two. And the other big thing it would do is improve safety. So Zoo interchange crashes were already reduced by 34%, and Marquette interchange crashes were reduced by 45%. So by modernizing this, we'd expect even bigger improvements on both ends and reduce congestion and accidents along this corridor. So what are we doing as a part of this study? we are going to confirm what was previously established. This is not a complete restart of the study. We had a signed record of decision. So we're going to keep the previous preferred alternative as much as we can and reevaluate as needed. But we wanted to clarify that we are not pursuing a double-decker option at the cemetery. So the current efforts started this summer. We are currently collecting survey, traffic, hazmat, and art history information, and we're looking at changes that have happened since the previous document was completed. And we're working with FHWA to determine what type of document is needed. Now, I want to say that one thing that's really important to us is public involvement emphasis. We plan on emphasizing on this project as we do on all, but there's going to be a proactive approach. So a thorough and throughout the study process, we have already started kickoff meetings with local officials. We will have expanded outreach to citizens and neighborhood groups. We will have a business advisory committee and a transit advisory committee. And we have an emphasis on DBE businesses and workforce development. So what are the next steps for this project is we want to confirm the documentation we need.
And Jeff, if you go to your previous slide,
yep.
This is an example where Mr. Hanna brought his question about urbanized areas, and this is where the secretary has made sure that we're on point. So you're seeing we're looking at DBE opportunities. We're looking at mitigation opportunities for transit, the public involvement. This is that highly urbanized area where we want to make sure that we do an excellent job of tapping in and taking advantage of any a good opportunity in front of us to serve the public, but also to get the most utility we can from other types of modes that we can implement, even if it's just mitigation during the project, but hopefully long term.
Yep, thanks, Joe. So the next steps are the document, continue public involvement. There's a lot of tight areas there. Look at utility feasibility studies. Preliminary and final design would follow, but just to let everybody know, legislative action is needed for enumeration on this project. So our preliminary schedule, if an EIS is not needed, is to finalize our record of decision or FONSI, what's needed in mid-2021. Do preliminary and final design between 21 and 26. And construction timeline, kind of based on environmental document and approval funding, could start as early as 23 or 24. Any questions on this project?
Okay. Not seeing any questions. Thank you, Jeff. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Secretary Designee Thompson for final discussions.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Joe. We're getting you in under 11 with the actions that needed to be taken and the updates, but I do want to make sure that we leave time if there's any other business that any of the commissioners or any questions that you didn't get to during this presentation, would like to give you the time now for any commissioners to bring up anything that they would like to discuss. If there's no additional information that people would like to discuss at this point in time, I would like to really, as I said in the beginning, once again, thank all the members of this commission. The work you do is so important to the state of Wisconsin. We really appreciate your time. I know it's more difficult to do that in these virtual settings. I wish we were doing it in the governor's conference room as we did last year. We do plan on having this, as we said, and the governor said initially, as a regular course of order that we will be having, to make sure that we have these at least once a year so that you have the input and the information moving forward. So I'm hopeful that the next one we have, we will be in person to be able to do this. And I really want to thank everybody again for their time. And then I don't know, do we need a motion for adjournment?
Yes, I believe we do.
I think at this point in time, then we would accept any motions for adjournment.
This is Petrusky. Move to adjourn.
Representative Spreitzer, second.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Oh, I thought we had.